Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Lizzie Anglin, and I serve as the Chief Elections Commissioner for the 2026 general elections. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to welcome our Student Body President, Emeritus, and City Council Member for District 1, Mr. Joseph Shepard. Please join me in welcoming Council Member Shepard. Welcome to the second and last presidential and vice presidential debate for the 2026 general election. For those of you joining us in person and via YouTube, thank you for being here. We'd also like to once again thank the Sunflower for moderating these debates. Your work is truly appreciated.
Hello, my name is Talia, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Sunflower.
And my name is Cass Lewis. I'm the news editor at the Sunflower.
This debate is a final opportunity for candidates seeking the presidency and vice presidency to discuss issues and questions impacting the lives of students each day. Students, this is your chance to learn about the candidates who will appear on the ballot. As a reminder, voting will start Monday, April 6th at 8 a.m. and closes Wednesday, April 8th at 5 p.m. In just a little bit, we will reintroduce each ticket, but first we want to remind you all how the debate is structured. Each ticket will have a 3-minute opening statement. Each ticket will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question, and each ticket will have the opportunity to answer every question. After all tickets have answered the question, each ticket will have the ability to offer a minute rebuttal. And finally, after all questions have been asked, at the end of the debate, each ticket will have 3 minutes to offer a closing statement. We provided each ticket with the rules beforehand and prior to the debate, and an order was established. Going first is Mason Fouquet, representing the Fouquet Kasir Sorosofar ticket. Unfortunately, Nazanin is out of the country and is unable to join us today. Responding second will be Jaden Island and Anushka Raju. We will also provide an opportunity for those in the audience, both in person and on YouTube, to ask a question. If you are in person and have a question, make your way to the back table and we have a slip of paper for you to fill out. If you are joining us on YouTube, please type your question in the comment box. We will try our best to get every question asked, but please note that we may not have time to get to each question. With that, I will pass it over to the Sunflower to begin moderating this debate.
Wonderful, thank you. Hello again, and thank you all for joining us here tonight. With only 4 days until the election, we've selected questions so students can better understand how each ticket would lead if elected. As Lizzie said, anyone in the audience or YouTube can ask questions, and we may read them to the candidates.
To start, we would like to ask the candidates to give us their opening statements. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for their statements. When there are 30 seconds remaining, we will give a light tap on the gavel. When time is allotted, there will be 2 taps. The debate will follow the reverse order of last debate, which was determined by the coin toss. Fouquet Kasirasafar, you may give your opening statement.
Well, hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Mason Fouquet, and my running mate, Nazanin Kasirasafar, regrets to inform everybody that she can't be here right now. She tried to join on the live stream if there was a Zoom option available, but there was not. She had scheduled this vacation long before I'd asked her to become my vice president-elect candidate, and she remains fully involved in shaping our campaign into what it is today. Our campaign, as you know from the last debate, is built on 3 core principles. Those are transparency, accountability, and student engagement. These principles guide not just what we believe, but how we plan to lead. We want a student government where students understand how decisions are made, where leaders take responsibility for those actions, and where every student feels connected to the SGA. If elected, we plan to lead by making SGA more open and approachable. That means sharing information about budgets, policies, and initiatives early so that students can provide input before decisions are made. We also want to strengthen communication between SGA and every student on campus. That is through surveys, forums, classroom visits, and direct engagement with student organizations so that no voice is left unheard. Accountability will be central to how we lead. Leadership isn't just about making decisions, but it's about standing by them, explaining them, and learning from them. Students deserve to see their leaders act with integrity and take responsibility when challenges arise. Transparency and accountability go hand in hand, and we are committed to ensuring both are visible in everything we do. Finally, engagement is what ties it all together. A government can be transparent and accountable, but if it doesn't actively involve students, then it's still falling short. We will create opportunities for students to participate meaningfully in decisions that impact their experience, from funding for RSOs to campus-wide initiatives, so that truly SGA will represent the entire student body. In short, we plan to lead a student government that is open, responsible, and connected. Our vision is simple: make sure every student feels heard, valued, and represented, because that's why our slogan is "Every Shocker Matters." Every student's voice shapes the future of our university, and every shocker truly does matter to us. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. We first wanted to thank you all for being here and giving us the opportunity to share our goals for the future of Wichita State University. For Jaden and I, Wichita State has become our community in every sense of the word. What began as a campus we came to for class has grown into a place that has shaped us, challenged us, and continues to push us to grow every day. It has become a home filled not only with mentors and friends, but with people who feel like family. Through our involvement in student government and other campus organizations, we've seen the impact that these spaces can have on students. We watched how the right support system empowers students to step into leadership, overcome challenges, and thrive beyond graduation. At the same time, we've listened to students who feel disconnected, who aren't sure where to turn when they need help. And those conversations remind us that while Wichita State is strong, there is still work to do.
Together, we are dedicated to upholding our vision of a place for all of us. To us, this is more than a slogan. It is a responsibility. It means fostering a campus culture where every student, regardless of their background, identity, or journey, feels like they belong at Wichita State. A place where students are not understood, are not only present, but included at the forefront of every decision. Not just heard, but understood. Our first campaign point is community, which means creating a campus culture where every student feels connected, valued, and reminded that their story is what makes this campus special. Our second campaign point, transparency, highlights a need for clear and direct government processes and administrative accountability across university systems. And our final campaign point, resilience, emphasizes a commitment to taking the steps needed to protect and affirm students no matter the cost. A place for all of us lives at the intersection of these three values. It is a community where every student feels they belong, a system that is transparent and built on trust, and reflects a culture that recognizes and supports the resilience of its students.
Wichita State is a collection of stories, experiences, and people who bring something special to our campus. When every voice is heard and every student is connected, that is when Wichita State is a place we can call home, a place for all of us. We encourage you to ask any and all questions. We are here for you to listen, to connect, and to earn your trust.
Thank you. Now on to the questions. Each ticket will have a minute and a half to answer each question. The questions will follow Fouquet and Kasira Safar ticket first, and then Island Raju. After all tickets have answered, each ticket will have the ability to offer a 1-minute rebuttal.
Similar to the opening statements, a light tap of the gavel means 30 seconds are left, and then 2 taps means your time has allotted. Our first question is, if you win the election, what would you like to accomplish in the first 90 days?
If myself and Nazanin were to win the election, the first things that we'd like to accomplish would be to ensure that our values and what this whole campaign is built on is at the forefront of our administration. So whether that's going through the preliminary interviews with directors potentially to make sure that we hire the right staff that will outreach to the right students to get things done. It's in order to make sure that they know what they're supposed to do, and so that we can lead not only by example, but to make sure everybody has a conducive work environment, because we don't want there to be anything lost in translation. So whether that's basically just first starting with events, making sure students know who we are and how we plan to lead the university. I'm sure there's going to be some sort of press release if the next president chooses, and that would be great, I think, for helping student engagement, making sure everybody's on the same page with what's going to happen. And just basically, more than anything, pushing forth the agenda that we're trying to with our campaign, making sure everybody understands that they're the reason that we ran, and that's why we're here.
One of our first goals when it comes to being in office those first 40 days is really building that strong cabinet. So that means, going through the process to make sure that our treasurer is a competent individual who's able to understand university financial processes, even down to making sure that a director of international student organizations knows what specific concerns are most pressing to those student populations. And in addition to that, I think that a really important second matter to us is really making sure that we're connecting students on that individualized level and ensuring that we're upholding transparency from day one. So there's a lot of things that happen in legislative session over the summer that we want to make sure we're providing consistent updates to students about, as well as making sure we're still out in the community during the summer. Summer doesn't mean that students stop taking classes, so that doesn't mean that that's a time for us to stop outreach to students who are on campus every day during that time.
If you are elected, you would get to appoint members of your cabinet. What are your priorities picking those members?
My goal in picking the members of the cabinet, whether it's the treasurer or the directors, is that I want to pick people who have shockers first at the forefront of their mind. I don't want someone who's going to come in here and make decisions based on what they want. I want decisions made based on what you guys want, whether it's just student population overall, or whether it's marginalized groups that are going to come before, say, student government and make their case, make their plea. I want anybody who's on my cabinet to be able to represent the university with pride, and I don't want it to be someone who would have a shady history, who would have had any sort of past intention of any wrongdoing. I don't want it to be somebody who has ever been found to have done anything academically at this university that's not within compliance of university rules. I want it to be somebody who's going to uphold our standard to the fullest extent.
In picking cabinet members, I think it's not only a priority to have competent members who have experience in their unique areas, but I think also having students that are able to show that passion and connection for students at the university. It's incredibly important to us that, of course, students feel as if our directors and cabinet positions are people that they can see themselves represented within. So ensuring that we are representing a diverse amount of backgrounds and student experiences, having different majors and unique student experiences represented on our cabinet is something that's incredibly important. In addition, during that choosing process, I think making sure that we have a team member who's able to work collaboratively, but also people that show that they're not afraid to have disagreements with one another. Having a cabinet that's full of, yes-sayers is something that we certainly wouldn't want. I think that having an element of dissent in members that are able to have healthy disagreements throughout our administration is something that we prioritize.
Yes, and in addition to having cabinet members who are incredibly passionate about the work that they would be doing, having individuals who come into student government who are ready to learn, because student government is a complex system, and during the summer is an ideal time to learn about how the system works and to adapt and bring their initiatives to be able to work with the student body.
Okay, our first audience question is, what is one problem on campus that students constantly talk about but nothing changes, and what will you do differently to fix it?
That's a good question because we have quite a few. I think one of the biggest problems that I've heard talked about on campus is the quality of food in the RSC. I don't know whether that's at a level store to store, or if that's just overall the preparation of the food needs to be kept in check, but I've heard complaints of soggy chicken from Chick-fil-A. I've heard complaints of rock hard rice from Panda Express. And while that may seem like a minor thing, I think that at the core of what we're doing here is, it's in our campaign. We want to advocate for students. So if you guys think that the food's not up to standard, tell the university, because they can change that and we can change that. So I think through preventative measures like that, food's just an example, but obviously the general population of student government, we all agree that there is not enough outreach with SGA. We don't get through to enough people. We have 30-some seats taken out of a 55-seat Senate. So we need to have more outreach with that. We need to have more people in the know with what's going on, and the transparency factor alone that both tickets here are big on. We both understand that transparency makes sense because it needs to happen, and it's not happening currently. So whether that's through university processes, student government, or engagement, we can increase all of these things.
For us, I think we've recognized that one of the biggest concerns for students right now is parking. And so one of the things that we'd like to prioritize in terms of moving that conversation forward, while it may not be, in the university's plan to expand land or anything like that in the near future, I think that having strong relationships with those offices and sitting down with parking services to see that what can we do in our capacity as student government officials to help guide those conversations forward, and even provide more information directly from parking services to students to really build that gap in communication that's happening, can help us have more productive student more productive conversations towards how we can improve those parking conversations.
All right. This is the audience question from last time. So last time during the debate, this is specifically to Fouquet and Kasira Safar. During the last debate, you mentioned the cuts to esports, rowing, and debate, and how it was akin to a wrecking ball to the groups and budgets. If you were opposed to the cuts, why didn't you mention those reservations during the Senate approval process as current senators?
That's a fair question, by all means. So Nazanin and myself felt that the budget cuts were too late and too much at once. The funding decisions were made very quickly by the Finance Commission, obviously, and they took an ample amount of hours to do so. But I think that with how late in the evening it was during our Senate session, the Senate didn't really have a chance to fully digest the numbers. And so at the time, it seemed like it would make sense to split the discussion and come back at a different date. But unfortunately, that's not how finance hearings work. That's not how the Senate gets to do so. When the Finance Commission has made their claim, it is up to the Senate in one night to get those resolutions figured out so that in the next meeting, we can figure out if any, I guess, policy writers are going to be implicated onto those. So the Student Fees Commission raised concerns about allocating funding to the organizations, and their arguments were valid in the moment. When they came before us and the treasurer and different organizations came in here, the arguments were valid. And I think that the unfortunate part was afterward, after all this was put into effect, the student response was what hurt, because people realized that it's like, okay, as good of an argument as you can have, I mean, it's never going to be perfect. Students are still going to have things that happen that they don't agree with, and their funding is going to be cut. When it may seem okay in the moment, it's not okay overall. I mean, look at O.J. Simpson; he got off. So I'm just saying, I think that obviously more hearing from the students would have been great.
I think from our perspective, it was definitely disheartening to see senators that had objections to the packet that was proposed when they had ample opportunities not to do so. I think as executive members, it's one of our great responsibilities and privileges to be able to speak with senators during legislative committees and be able to give them pointers and advice and things when they do have concerns. Senators have access to those packets days in advance, usually when they have access to this information, had ample time to watch the student fees deliberations and come up with solutions before the time was presented. So we certainly think that if Fouquet and Kasira Zafar had reservations beforehand, that those should have been brought to the floor.
Okay, another audience question. Both campaigns have transparency as a campaign point for their platforms. How will both tickets aim to improve transparency in addition to the work that has been done this session?
I think that in our hopes to aim transparency at the peak of what our three tenets are, we need to think about what we're putting forth on Instagram. Specifically, when all of the Senate candidates and myself and Nazanin and their ticket got introduced for the roles that we were going to be in, the SGA of Wichita State Instagram spelled the word candidates wrong on every single post. And to me, that doesn't seem like putting our best foot forward as a university. They had to go through and delete every single one of those posts and redo them. So not only do I want all the measures to be taken to ensure that we're not making simple mistakes like this, but I also think that if we're not going to be held to the higher standard, people aren't going to take it seriously, and therefore they're not going to be interested. That's why the transparency isn't there to begin with right now. So what I would like to have happen is I would like to use the Shocker Blast to our fullest potential, putting SGA initiatives at the forefront of that, saying, hey, here's what's going on this week, here's how you can get involved. I think the directors should be having more one-on-one meetings with students, whether it's through tabling initiatives, whether it's through checking into the different schools on campus, making sure that everybody's in the know, because that's how we need to increase the transparency for students to be involved with the SGA.
Yeah, for us, transparency is ultimately making SGA more digestible to every student on campus. I think our directors currently do a great job of tabling and reaching out to students, whether it's through SGA Connect, RSO Week, SGA Week. I mean, even this past week, Wellness Week, we have the data to back up that we have had these conversations with students and that these conversations are happening. I think going forward, it's important for us to continue to have these conversations and look at the data, as well as push beyond the RSC, push towards the other academic buildings on campus and just meet students where they are. Speaking to marketing itself, we have an SGA newsletter, and I think we would love to continue to build on top of that, maybe introduce things like in a video form or things like that, to make sure that the language surrounding SGA is digestible to every student, and that every student knows that we are here for them.
And even in regards to some of the maybe typos or things that have happened in our marketing communications, I think that we're all human. We make mistakes, things like that slip beyond the cracks. But I think the intention behind that specific student action, making sure that students are informed about who they're voting about, making sure that students know that they have the capacity to come to these debates and gather answers to their questions, the intention behind those actions is what truly matters when we're talking about transparency in student communications.
Yeah, and just a rebuttal against that, I think, obviously I agree that, our transparency needs to come first, but there's a difference between human error and looking over something like that. I mean, that's a pretty large oversight. There was, I don't know how many senators, there was maybe 14 or so senator candidates plus our tickets. If we are supposed to be the ones running the university at a student level, we're at the highest front. And so people need to be able to look to us to lead. And I think that if you're making a simple mistake like that, that just shows bigger issues with what's going on at a deeper level.
And what's one thing that you both appreciate about the current SGA session that you would like to continue?
One thing I appreciate about the current SGA session is the certain people that run the Senate. I will say that it's been great for me with Vice President Wynn and Speaker Fawn and Clerk Thompson. They all do a great job regulating the meetings. I think that everything goes to plan most of the time, and everything is pretty cut and dry with how it's going to be run. I like how we can have a little bit of fun in Senate sometimes and make it personal. Last night we did the April Fools. We had a I Heart Speaker Fawn put on a sticker, and we all put them on our laptops. But I just like how the leadership at least is engaging enough to where they're making you feel like you're cared for, because surely not everybody does, but I do appreciate how leadership does that.
One of the great things about student government, beyond the passion that leadership has for its fellow peers, is the way that we've been able to intentionally engage with students this session. So specifically with our Director of Outreach, he's been really intentional about creating specific data-driven marketing initiatives in terms of going out to different campus buildings, whether that be the Shocker Success Center or Woolsey Hall, to be getting specific feedback and really moving forward with specific implementation plans after that feedback. And then secondarily, I think that the way that our Legislative and Policy Affairs Director has been able to get direct information from the Kansas Senate and be able to bring that not only to the executive branch, but also to some of our folks in the judicial and legislative branches as well, to make sure that they're up to date on the most pressing matters that are happening, not only in higher education, but in our state as a whole.
We have another audience question. Given current changes happening across state and federal agencies that are impacting WSU students, how will you support and protect queer, Black, Hispanic, Asian, and other students?
I like this question because I think that the bigger issue with the state legislation changes is that they're going to change all the time. So we need to be able to come in and say, okay, well, let's make sure we're in compliance with this, because otherwise our university loses funding. Specifically with these groups, I think that we need to advocate for them just as much as anybody else. I think that, for me at least, I view that as almost a pointed question, because it's like, guys, we are not focusing on the right thing here. Rather than picking out and cherry picking certain groups and saying, how can we help them? Let's think about why we're all here. We're students overall, first and foremost. My goal is not to help specific groups and leave other groups in the dust. I want to help everybody equally. And I think that part of doing that is making sure that all the groups are looked after and making sure that everybody knows that we care about them and that they matter to us, and that's why we're here. The word Catholic literally means universal. And longer than anything else in my life, I've been a Catholic. So I care about helping people universally and knowing that we can be united as one rather than separating ourselves into certain groups.
It is not enough just to assert that legislation is going to change all the time. Our administration hopes to be intentional about when we're interacting with queer students, with Black students, with Hispanic students, with students of all types of marginalized populations, I think that coming up with creative solutions to not only be in compliance with the law and ensuring that we're adhering to university recommendations and administrative accountability, but I think also making sure that we're having solutions that provide safe spaces for these marginalized students and ensure that they're able to still have places where they can thrive in a university setting that's not always built in their best interests.
Yeah, and to add on, equality is not the same thing as equity. Not all of us come into college with the same resources, and so providing equal support is not going to bring all of us to the same level. By providing equitable support, we're able to help students who maybe come in with fewer resources or fewer support systems to be able to succeed and ultimately cross the stage of graduation.
And this doesn't even just apply to specific identities. This applies for students from different socioeconomic backgrounds. We know that this legislation even impacts students from different immigration statuses, and so making sure that they have access not only to academic and social resources, but financial resources as well is a top priority for our administration.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good. One thing that Jaden mentioned was that this university may not be set up as well for Black students. I was just curious if you'd be able to elaborate on that.
There's so much that I could get into about my experience as a Black student, but I think that this discussion is so much more than what my individual experience as a Black student has been. There are systems that are set up against me in every single way, but I think that by having connections in the university and administrators, legislative people, and the student body that are willing to advocate for me, having leadership that knows my intense struggles, who may not be able to specifically speak to my experiences, but understand where I'm coming from, and can even say that I have a problem and say that I come from a different background, just being able to acknowledge that is something that I would hope any leadership or person in a leadership position would be able to do.
And what sets you apart from your opponent, starting with Fouquet?
I think the thing that primarily sets me and Nazanin apart from the opposition is that we come into this as not long-term SGA members, not as people who have had immense amounts of exposure to SGA, but we're both in our first year. And myself especially, I know what it's like to come on a campus and look your head both ways and not have people on your side. I came from obviously a pretty great high school here in Wichita, and I came to WSU, and I didn't have a lot of friends going here. Most of the people ended up at KU or K-State. But what I think about is how we can better improve this university for all the people that we're talking about. It's not just specific groups. It's not just picking on whether we want, my friends to have help or whether we want her friends to have help. We want everybody to be able to have the opportunities that we have on campus. We have the opportunity to come here and to come to a school where we can be together, and we look around and we still see isolation and loneliness. And to me, that's indicative of a bigger issue, and that's the issue of a lack of unity. So I think through increasing events, increasing student turnout at athletics, trying to increase the amount of fairs or mixers that we have, utilizing the hidden gems of Wichita like the Shocker Lanes. I mean, how many people go bowl? I think that just by bringing more students together, we can help create more of a community, because that's what we need is community.
Yeah, I think for Jaden and I, one of the main things that sets us apart is the quality and the amount of engagement that we have had with students already, not only within SGA. This is my first year too, but this does not mean it's my first year engaging with students. I've had the opportunity to put myself into spaces where I have been able to talk to students and learn what community really means here at Wichita State. We have both within our campaign tabling and tabling within SGA and beyond that made an intentional point that every conversation that we have with students is equally important, and we take every conversation that we have with an incredible amount of respect, and it's just very important to us that students know that the conversations that we have with you do matter, and we do take all of those things that you bring up to us into consideration within our campaign.
I think secondarily, making sure that our campaign and our administration's initiatives are not only student-focused but data-driven. I think having the student feedback and data to support a lot of our decisions is something that our administration wants to be intentional in doing. And then I think outside of that, one of the main things that separates our administration and our tickets is the way that we want to put student voices first. I think that words can mean nothing when you're not actually doing the work to let students know that their voices are heard and that they matter.
We have another audience question. Recently, several identity-based agencies were demoted to RSOs. How will you support these groups during your session?
Yeah, so with the change in the legislature in Kansas that's been talked about multiple times during this debate now, part of that was with the restructuring of the budget provisos. They had to change agencies that were recognized in the SGA bylaws as agencies now down to nothing but an RSO status. So with that, there's going to be people coming into this that don't know how to operate these things the same way that an agency was being operated. And I think first and foremost, we need to be able to reach out to them and ask them if they need help. Because they're going to have questions, and when they have questions, they need to have someone to look to. Furthermore, people who come into the university and run RSOs, they need help too. Because a lot of the times they don't know how to run these RSOs, and they're not even sure what the processes are, how the prepaid cards work, how any of the allocation of funding goes. So I think making sure that we can have those talks with people using our directors and using our outreach to be able to say, hey, if you need help, just come ask, because we're here for that. I think specifically with the agencies now that are demoted to RSOs, we need to make sure they are under the understanding that they're still as important as they were as an agency. It's just pretty much a change in semantics.
From our understanding, we know that this was not an easy decision that the current administration had to make. Of course, with the budget provisos, the things that we could do were limited, and so in order to preemptively ensure that our agencies remained safe and had the resources that they needed access to, this was a decision that was not made lightly. I think the secondary notion that we want to make and what we want to say to our agencies is that, we don't want you all to think of this as a demotion, but rather than a change in a strategic way to continue supporting you all. This is something that we want to make sure that you all have the resources that you need, whether that be financially, socially, or through the advisors that many of you love and want to continue working with. I think that ensuring that we keep that open door policy, making sure that you all know that we are here to continue supporting you and understand the unique struggles that you have, and that we're here to answer any questions that you may have about the appropriations process, about budgetary constraints or anything like that. We're here for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that our administration would come to our agencies with help. They would not have to come to us and ask for help. We would rather be proactive than reactive when they need help.
All right. And how would you balance your responsibilities as student body president and vice president with the obligations of being a student?
That's a great question. And to that, I say it's not much of a bigger task than I have now, or that I have had for the last 4 years. So I've been employed at Kansas Natural Stone, which is a stone yard on the west side of town, since I was a 16-year-old junior in high school. And with that, even during the school year, I maintained a heavy work schedule. In the summer, I was doing about 60 hours a week on average out there. I had all kinds of other side hustles going. And when it came to college, during the school year, I got involved with Turning Point as the vice president and started maintaining a lot of hours with helping out our organization, trying to make sure that we're promoting civic engagement, we're hosting events, we're making sure every student in our organization is cared for and they know what's going on and when, and also trying to spread the word. Under my leadership of Turning Point, but not solely, thanks to the people in our chapter, we've grown from 300 followers on Instagram to over 3,000. So I know what it's like to lead. And with that, I think that a big part of it is maintaining the work-life balance that we already try to have. With school, I know that I put in countless hours a week between work, school, and student government already, along with everything else I do. So this, to me, would be no bigger of a task, and I'm excited to take it head on. I know Nazanin would say the same because she always has been an overachiever.
I will not shy away from the fact that being a student government official is a much higher responsibility than many of us are ready to take on. But I think that from my own experience, I think that in having conversations and being involved in student government for the past few years, that I'm willing to be open and learn about what time management strategies for this specific position look like in that transition period with the current student body president. I think that Anushka and I are both excited to learn more about our positions and use our current time management skills to continue excelling in representation of over 18,000 students.
Yeah, definitely echoing Jaden. This is not, running for this position is not a decision that was taken lightly. There was a lot of consideration that went into this, and being a student at the same time was one of those things that I considered. I currently do work in the emergency department, and I work night shift, so I am familiar with navigating a hectic environment. But the one thing I have learned throughout my entire college experience is to give 100% in the space that you're in at the moment, and to make every minute matter.
Okay. The next question is, the CAC Theater is undergoing the first stage of renovations to make it ADA compliant, partially being paid for by SGA. Both the current administration and the director of the Radigan Student Center, Kevin Conda, talked about different financial options for future phases of this project, student fee increases, bonds, or zeroing out the special projects fund. What are your thoughts on this project and how it should be paid for?
I think the ADA compliance of the CAC Theater is something that's long overdue. I mean, we hosted an event in there with my RSO just in the last year, and I will say that that was very hectic. Not only was the old architecture not inducive of anybody who was a wheelchair user, but I noticed that it was very steep in there too, just the actual layout of the theater. The stairs are steep, and even for someone who is not in a wheelchair, it's definitely a pretty good incline. So I think talking with Kevin Conda and others, the way that I would want to go about it would be to make an open poll and see what students think would be the best method. Because not only could we have either student fee increase or bonds, but I mean, what about private donors? Have we thought about that? Because I think that there's a good chance that someone who maybe used to have a lot of connection with the CAC Theater would be interested in getting involved, and that could help us to not have to raise fees in any way. So I think it's just about maintaining a communication and having that open conversation about what could happen.
Fortunately, I've been involved in different capacities with the RSC Board of Directors over the past few years, and so having a close connection to these conversations really informs the way that I think we would navigate some of these discussions. One of the things that I really appreciate about Kevin's leadership is that in his position as a 501c3 owner, he's really creative in thinking of different solutions to ways that he could fund this project. He understands that students should not always have to be the ones footing the bills for projects that would help them the most. And so in looking for alternative streams of revenue, whether that be from community partners like Mason suggested, or whether that be through the foundation and alumni network and other creative solutions, I think that this is a project that needs to happen, not just for those with limited mobility status, but even those that have other sorts of visual and mobile impairments. I think that making this campus accessible, not just through the CAC Theater, but in more projects in the future, is something that our administration certainly prioritizes.
Name one thing that you respect or admire about the other ticket.
One thing I would say that I specifically, and I know that myself and Nazanin have had multiple conversations about this, but that we both admire, is that you guys are passionate. I'll give you that. You know, they care about this university just like we do, and they want to see a positive change, and that's why they're sitting on the stage. So I have to give them the accolades on that. That's something that we're really all in agreement of. The other thing is transparency. I think we both understand that that has to be at the forefront of student government, and that's why we both care so much about it. But yeah, it's something that I'm glad we both hold at the front of our beliefs.
I think one thing that we both certainly admire about the Fouquet-Kassira-Safar administration is their drive to stay engaged and up to date on issues that matter to our students. I think that them being as informed as they can be with the information that they're provided in their roles as senators, the time that they take out of their days and their weeks to engage in Senate committee discussions and make sure that they're doing the best that they can in their capacity is something that we certainly admire.
We definitely also admire your passion, whether that's in Senate or in your committee meetings. Chairperson Kassira-Safar has recently worked on some legislation, and so that was very nice to see in Senate meetings, and also the support that you give your fellow senators is really nice to see as well.
Another audience question. Both SGA ticket candidates that are involved in SGA can both speak about their experiences and outreach in the current session.
You're saying can they both?
I'll just read it again. Both SGA ticket candidates are involved in SGA, can both speak about their experiences and outreach in the current session.
Understand, okay. So with the current session, the 68th session of SGA, we've had quite the time getting I guess, involved and having to learn all the processes of how Senate runs and how it works was something that was a little bit of a learning curve for me. I came in with no previous knowledge whatsoever of how it went, and I would say got pretty well indoctrinated in everything in the first couple of weeks. I had to figure out how it worked and how we passed bills, how we passed legislation, how to make a motion, and all these different things. But I think part of the outreach that was involved was with Nazanin specifically. She had the A+ legislation that she was trying to pass, basically to add an honorary A+ to the grading scale. A bill that I was involved on was one that Director Murphy had, and that was the night of honoring Mike Kennedy, the voice of Shocker athletics. So we've both been involved on a few bills, but definitely overall, just for me at least, it was a learning curve coming in that now I understand a lot better. And for Nazanin, in her role as a chairperson, she has to oversee her committee and therefore has a lot more responsibility than the average senator would. So with her being in the Academic Affairs Committee, she understands that there's a lot more legislation that's going to be coming through her way and that she has to either okay or have meetings with senators one-on-one just to discuss and make sure that everybody's going to be on the same page for their committee.
Yeah, for me, sorry, could you repeat the question?
Both SGA ticket candidates are involved in SGA. Can both speak about their experiences in outreach in the current session?
Okay, I'm going to talk about Wellness Week, which was this past week. One of the things that I really, really love about my role is just getting to talk to students about how they're feeling physically, mentally, and responding to that need. So one of the things that we were able to do this week is have our first vision care clinic that is not only just a data-backed it wasn't just a data-backed initiative, but it was also based on conversations that I had with students in the fall and Heather Stafford at the Student Health Services. So we were able to provide vision care to 21 students, and almost every single one said that this is an initiative that they really appreciated, and all of that was just based on conversations that I had with students and student-serving entities here on campus.
For myself, serving as the undergraduate student advocate, it's been a blessing to be able to represent students on a variety of different cases, whether that be academic appeals, program dismissals, or parking appeals. I think being able to intimately get to know administrative processes and understand how discussions with different bureaucratic entities here on campus works really is going to be define the way that I, would hope to lead with Anushka in our administration. And even in my time in the 67th session as an underrepresented student senator, getting to know what it looks like in the legislative space and having discussions about what it looks like to have initiatives that are fruitful from beginning to end is something that I'm really appreciative of.
Okay, another audience question. How will SGA, or how will you both, assist in the growing portion of adult learners and returning students as they get back into the college environment?
So looking at both adult learners, graduate students who maybe are older and therefore going to be in that adult learner category, getting back into school is something that I think is very honorable because it's something that you have to give credit for. It's like if you chose previously in your life to go through college and maybe drop out and pursue a trade or to go into something for a few years, life happens. I mean, you have kids quick and then everything's a blur. And I know from talking to a few people that are older that have come back, my boss being one of them, he got his degree when he was in his 50s. So I think it's respectable because they have less of a support system and yet they're still coming back onto this campus and they have the ability to come back here. And so I think we need to support them specifically because it's great that they're able to do that. So looking out for them, whether it's with our initiatives in SGA or just making sure that they have a network and they're heard as well. Because I think a lot of the stigma of it is that they feel maybe out of place as an older student with a lot of the younger students running around on campus. So just to make sure they know that they're heard and appreciated just as much as every other student would be at the forefront of how we'd go about dealing with adult learners.
It's not a new phenomenon that undergraduate education isn't built for adult learners or those returning to the classroom after a long time away. And so one of the great things about Anushka and I's tabling opportunities during our campaign is that we've been able to hear concerns directly from some of our adult learners about how they want to engage more intentionally with student government. For example, we had an adult learner come to us and tell us that, they would like to be involved in student government. However, some of the timing of the Senate sessions disallows them from spending time with family and getting work done in the evenings. And And so having initiatives like having an adult learners committee that's able to meet earlier on in the day, so we're still able to hear those critical perspectives while taking into account that adult learners have very different perspectives, and we need to accommodate for those unique aspects of their student experience.
Yeah, also a lot of our adult learners are, they do have their own families, and so making sure that there's space for them to bring their families to campus. We have Parents Weekend for our undergraduate students, so I think it's just important that we support our adult learners with something like Kids Weekend, or just a time for them to be able to bring their kids or loved ones to campus, because just as much as our parents are a support system for us, their children and family members are also a big part of their support system as well.
Okay, we have another audience question for the Fouquet Caceres Afar ticket. Given your past leadership roles in a political organization, how will you ensure impartiality when representing and making decisions for the entire student body with a wide range of political views?
That's a good question. I think at the forefront of this, people think about Turning Point USA and they think of it as a political organization. What I think is that Turning Point USA has not hindered my ability to have impartiality among student leadership in any way. I think it's actually helped. Because if you think about what Turning Point USA is and does as an organization, we are a civic group that tries to promote engagement of different thoughts in respectful debate and discussion. We promote free markets, free people, and free speech. And that is nothing that I wouldn't want to do for this university. I would want there to be a difference of thought. I want there to be respectful debate, and I want people to be able to come together and think, okay, well, I don't agree with you, but that's okay, because we all have this wonderful place that we live in, and it's called Wichita, Kansas, and we can have our different thoughts and still be friends. Because to me, I understand where that question's coming from. I understand how it may sound, but I want to dismiss that more than anything else. I think that Turning Point has helped, and I've had so many wonderful conversations with students that I don't agree with that, I've now made friends with. I mean, one of my best friends, we never agreed on anything back in the day, and it was through conversation that we got to understand each other better, and that's why we're so close today. So if elected, I would approach every decision with fairness in mind. I wouldn't have any sort of impartiality to help anybody that agrees with me over other students, and I would want everybody to be equally represented. Thank you.
I don't think that we can shy away from the reputation that Turning Point USA has on our campus. I know that in recent years, many students have complained of aggressive marketing tactics, specifically targeting trans and queer students. And so I think, while yes, the organization may not hold the values that many students perceive them to have, it's still important to be able to recognize the impact that you have on students and be able to directly address the concerns that they have about some of the values that may not be promoted specifically at the chapter here at Wichita State, but some of the rhetoric that's been spewed by some of the other chapters across the country.
To that I say, we are not the other chapters across the country. We're the chapter at Wichita State, and we believe in what we believe in because we want to promote a free, automatically, no borders dialogue. We don't want there to be any sort of incorrect statements. We don't want there to be any sort of anger or angst in what we're saying. We literally are just operating to have a difference of thought and a respectful debate. That's all that we're doing. So while I understand that most people may perceive it differently because they hear the news and they see what happens with different organizations across America, I would like to remind everybody that that's not us, and we are here to support our neighbor just as much as any of ourselves.
All right. WSU is a vital part of the city of Wichita. What can the city do to better support students? What will you do to collaborate with the city?
I like this because as a Wichita native and someone who was born and raised here, I recognize that we have a wonderful city. We've been blessed to be not only in the heart of the heartland, but to have a city where you're not far from your neighbor. I think that one thing that I would want to do personally is get involved more with city boards. I had a meeting with the Vice Mayor of Wichita and Councilman Glasscock. He said that one thing he would like to see at a city level is more involvement from WSU students on city boards, whether that's Young Professionals Board or Young Leaders Board, or just trying to make sure that everybody has a way to get involved with the city government so that they stay here and we don't lose citizens. Because Wichita in general is not only ever booming, but now more than ever. It's become, I think we have over 600,000 in the metro area, and we're probably going to be at 1 million in the next 20 years. So I think for sure that we need to try to keep our students here. I'd like to work with other companies in the Wichita to help career fairs and maybe increase more student engagement of jobs after graduation. And that's another thing that we could talk about too, is the amount of jobs after graduation. I noticed that it seems like it's getting ever so hard to find a job because the pool is getting more and more nuanced. And so I want it to be able to where students who come in from other lands, foreign, can stay in Wichita and live here and be happy here, because that's what we want.
One of the wonderful things about going to Wichita State is that we are an urban serving institution. We are in the middle, we're 1 mile away from a hospital. We have multiple aerospace industry companies on campus. And so one of the gifts of that is our students are exposed to so many different areas where they can pursue a career. So one of the things that Jaden and I would love to do within our administration is to continue to push for those connections for students to build those bridges to a career in Wichita. So whether that's our nursing students with any of our local hospitals, or any of our business students with our very successful local businesses that we have in Wichita, or even our engineering students with other engineering companies here on campus in Wichita. I think those are all very important to us, and continuing to keep students here post-graduation is ultimately found within job security. And so by building those connections prior to graduation, we are more likely to be able to keep more students here post-grad.
Even outside of that, I think utilizing the alumni connections that we're privy to as members of student government, Emeritus President Joseph Shepard currently serves as the council member for the district that Wichita State is located inside of. So really utilizing those alumni connections and working closely with those key voices in the Wichita community to support students in every capacity is something that we are certainly looking forward to getting to work on.
Our next audience question is, with the incoming introduction of a new Vice President of Student Affairs, how would you approach ensuring that the student experience is conveyed accurately to this new administrator?
Yeah, with the new Vice President of Student Affairs coming in, I would want to make sure that we obviously can reflect the student sentiment as well as possible, making sure that they're going to know that the students, the things that the students care about most are pushed forward, and that we can have, almost like a onboarding meeting to basically say, okay, here's what we need to have happen in this administration. Here's what things that we're looking to do. Here's what the students have told us that they care about. And by compiling a list, we can make sure that it's as seamless a transition as possible to make sure that everybody has their voice heard and therefore understands, what this new role is going to accomplish. So I think that, it's just a matter of having the meetings with the students to understand that, their beliefs or their interests are at the front of what we're doing.
One of the great things about the current student affairs leadership here at the university is their willingness to involve students in every decision that they make. And so fortunately, Anushka and I have had the opportunity to sit in on some of the direct Vice President of Student Affairs interviews that have happened in the past few weeks. We've gone to the public forum sessions that have been open to all students and faculty at the university. We've been able to directly engage with some of the finalist candidates, ask them questions about matters that are most pressing to students, ask them questions about what their vision is for Wichita State University, learn about their history, learn about the universities that they came from. And so in having that background information, being able to form early connections with those candidates has already informed the way that we are able to plan our intentional interactions with them and specific advocacy for students through their role as a liaison whenever they're hired onto the university.
Another audience question. How would you respond to incidents that impact campus climate? Examples, bias incidents, national events, etc. And what role should SGA play in these moments?
Yeah, in regards to incidents that would play a role in campus climate, I would want to first and foremost say that I think that we need to be able to have a campus that comes together on issues like this. And no matter what the issue is, we need to be able to talk to one another and try to delegate, respectfully, and say, okay, well, if there's an issue that, whether it's, I guess you said, an issue of bias, if any sort of issue on a national level, whether it's the amount of funding that the school is getting, or how we'd be using our budgets, or what kind of events we'd be hosting, we would want to be able to reflect the student sentiment in everything we do. So I've said it a few times, but this is at the forefront, is making sure that every student knows that they can bring forth new ideas to directors, that they can comment on our social medias, that they can reach out to us directly, that any of ideas that you may have as a student would be heard and respected.
Specifically as it pertains to bias incidents, safety concerns on campus, and national concerns, I think that one of the privileges of working in the student body administration is having those close connections with university administrators like President Muma and Provost Lounsbury to be able to not only get information directly from those who are going to be making bigger decisions in those circumstances, but I think, like we said, in those first 40 days of our administration, when we're making, forming those early connections with those administrators, making sure that we have plans in place so that students aren't getting that information as soon as these incidents occur, but are able to know ahead of time what is the university's plan for when, God forbid, an incident like this happen.
All right. Another audience question. How will each ticket work and listen to students who may have conflicting viewpoints or stances with your future administration?
I know I've touched on this already, but yeah, I mean, I welcome conflicting viewpoints because I think that that's what's part of what we're doing tonight here is having a respectful debate. That's what's part of, any administration is hearing out the interests of those who you're supposed to represent. And I think that more than anything, that's important because if we all had the same viewpoint, we would be nothing special. Because a room of 18,458 people, as of fall 25, the enrollment number, if we all had the exact same views, what would we be able to get done? There has to be opposing beliefs, there has to be opposing views, we have to have these conversations. So yeah, I welcome that. And I think it'd be great to hear some opposing views and how we could go about figuring out issues that would pertain to these things.
Could you repeat the question, please?
How will each ticket work and listen to students who may have conflicting viewpoints or stances with your future administration?
Yeah, like we talked about a little bit in terms of our choosing our cabinet process, I think welcoming that healthy dialogue and being able to engage with students in a respectful manner. And so not just immediately putting off their points of view, but being able to ask engaging questions with them, learning a little bit more about where they're coming from, and not only inserting our past biases, but being able to get additional information from students to understand where they're coming from. And then secondarily, when it comes to, getting that impact in the student senate, I know that Mason talks about, 30 or so odd senators, but in fact, this session has been one of the most engaging Senate sessions that we've had in the past few administrations. And so keeping on that trajectory of getting students involved in student government and being able to have a diverse background of senators who are able to go out and get specific feedback from their constituents is something that we look forward to working with the speaker and those that are under their jurisdiction with.
Yeah, I agree. It's good to have an engaging Senate, but my thought on this would be, if we're the most engaging Senate in a few sessions with 30-some senators, imagine if we had a packed Senate floor, wow, it would be. So that's the goal, is to have more engagement among student government, and so that we could have better discussions within Senate, more interest in being in student government to begin with, and better conversations through that.
Next question is, the student body president has the power to veto legislation passed by the student senate. How do you decide what to veto and what to sign into law?
I think part of this is having a good team of advisors and directors. Obviously, if it's something that at a student level you think the student body is not going to agree with, then it's not just about you making that decision yourself. You need to be able to have the conversations with others who are in power and others who are on your cabinet to be able to say, is this going to really represent our students well? Is this going to be something that they would want? And then furthermore, to be able to ask them, because we can't just make these decisions behind closed doors all the time. We have to be able to open up and let them understand where we're coming from on things. So yeah, more than anything, I think it's about not making these decisions alone, but having a team of good people who you trust and who you know will make the right decision at the end of the day with you.
Yeah, I think that that's a responsibility as a student body president that isn't to be taken lightly. I think that that's part of the reason why we emphasize having a strong Senate leadership and being able to form close connections with our senators, because in part, if we're able to ensure that the legislative initiatives that our senators are seeking through, that they're able to ask the questions that are needed during the writing process and ahead of time, and they're having those communications with the speaker, with the president, the vice president, cabinet members, and what have you beforehand, beforehand, then, those checks and balances through the veto process may not need to be invoked as often if we're being intentional about the legislative initiatives that we're seeking forward ahead of time.
All right, another audience question. With the decreasing numbers of enrollment of international students each year and it affecting the university's budget, do you have any initiatives in mind to tackle this challenge?
I would say first that we still have the most international students out of any university in Kansas. And that's not a small statistic. That's something that we're proud of because we've increased the amount of engagement overseas to be able to help students come to a good school here halfway across the world and still feel at home. That's something that we pride ourselves on, and that's something that we want to continue. So having discussions with international student boards, making sure that they are welcomed here, that they're absolutely invited to come and to bring hopefully as many international students as possible, that's something that we value because it's a different perspective of life. That's something that someone who was born and raised in Kansas may not see. I've met great people through this program, and I love the program. I think that it's something that we definitely need to do the work to continue because it does numbers for our school, not just in enrollment, but bringing good people to this university.
Yeah, definitely continuing to bring international students from overseas here to pursue an education at Wichita State. But to do that, we have to show them that our international students that are already here are supported in their education. So whether that is through their employment opportunities or through making sure that they feel at home here, international students have a unique experience here because not only are they thousands of miles away from home, but they are integrating themselves into feeling comfortable in a country that they have never been into before. And so by showing that we do support international students to the best capacity that we can, and by providing them that support, that is potentially an initiative to help continue to grow those international student enrollment numbers.
And I think specifically in regards to the budgetary portion of the question, I think really working with our university administrators and really understanding what are some of the constraints keeping international students from continued enrollment. I know that from our International Student Education Office, we've seen data projections of lowered international student enrollment over the years. And I think even those enrollment numbers we've seen coming in much lower than projected. And so really working with administrators and understanding what those barriers are and being able to have creative solutions to overturn those is going to help enrich in our international student population in years to come.
All right, we're reaching the end of our list of prepared questions. So if any of the audience has a burning question, oh, thank you. Well, we have another one, so we can keep going. But I wanted to ask both of you, what's your favorite part of WSU? What's one of the things that you've enjoyed the most since you've come to this campus?
My favorite part of WSU is the culture. And I've said this during an interview with the Sunflower that I had previously, but not just the culture of SGA, not just the culture of the business school, but the culture of the school overall. When you look around, we are located in a great spot, being in southeastern Kansas, Not only do we have a community of people who are born and raised here that care about each other on a deep level because they want to see their fellow friends succeed at this school, but when you think of the international students that we have and the people who come in here and, get to live the American dream, guys, and to become part of this school, this is amazing. And so I think it's cool because the culture just shows how much everybody cares about each other. You notice that when you walk around on campus, it seems like, at least in the business school, people want to help each other, build each other up. People don't just naturally tear each other down immediately, but people truly do seem to smile at each other. And I've noticed that, at least in certain classes of mine. And I think that's something that's special because you can't be the same said for every school in America. And so I just really respect that WSU has a culture of mutual respect for your neighbor.
I've said this so many times before, but I'll say it again. My favorite part about Wichita State are the people that are here, whether it's our staff and our advisors or our students. One of the special things about our school is that we're small enough that you can get on a first name basis with a lot of people. As I look into the audience, I can say that's true. But it's also big enough that we all have the opportunity to pursue so many different activities and things that we're passionate about. And there's just so many things that for us to do, but at the same time, we do have that close-knit community that we can lean on each other when we do need each other.
I think it really can't be said better than that, but in addition to the people and the lovely faces that we see in the audience here today, I think the opportunities that the university provides in terms of applied learning and research for its undergraduate and graduate students alike is something that's really unique, especially for a smaller urban-serving Kansas institution. And so I think continuing to work with the Undergraduate Research and Creative Activity Hub, as well as some of our other research institutions here on campus, and continuing to move forward in the academic world is something that Wichita State is doing phenomenally.
Our final audience question, unless somebody brings one up soon. Let's say you do not win the election to be the next student body president and vice president. How will you continue to serve and advocate for students? Will you remain connected with SGA?
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, assuming the case that I don't win the election, that's totally fine. I would want the students to vote for the people who they most feel would represent themselves. And so if I don't, yeah, I'll absolutely stay involved with SGA as much as I can going into my senior year. I'll remain a senator, and I'll remain representing the Frank Barton School of Business in the Senate. I think that we've done some great things this year, and there's more to come.
I would also love to continue my involvement with SGA. Like I've said before, I've really just loved the role that I'm in right now, and that would be something that I would love to continue to pursue in the case that we are not elected into office. So just continuing to support students in the health and wellness space is a priority of mine as well.
Yeah, speaking for myself, I think that a continued presence in student government is something that I certainly look forward to, no matter the capacity, whether that be in the executive branch or as a senator. I think that continuing to support the students and advocate for their needs, no matter in what role that is something that's important for all students.
All right, the audience kicked up. How do you plan to juggle your responsibilities as a student leader in other organizations if you are elected?
Well, I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, but one of the things that I've always been really good at is my time management skills. I can put my all into a certain task and then, operate on very little sleep and put my all into the next task. I know that my family and friends can attest to this, but I don't get a lot of sleep on average per night, and I still perform very highly almost all the time. So I think that with juggling responsibilities, it's all about being able to know how much you're going to have of each certain thing, using your calendar to your advantage, making sure you have your meetings set up, you have everything in line, because this job is not going to be an easy job. And so taking it not lightly and taking with the respect that the role of a student body president and vice president deserves, yeah, we're going to be busy if elected, and that's what we're here for. So we're excited.
Yeah, I think we touched on this question a little bit earlier, but I think really leaning on your support systems, being able to understand the importance of delegation in this role is something that I certainly look forward to exercising. So being able to lean on my cabinet members and having competent leadership within us that's able to carry out some of those initiatives that we're able to put trust in. And I think secondarily, really being able to trust yourself when it comes to knowing how much responsibility you should continue to take on in your classes and personal life is a balance that all student leaders should get to learn more in any leadership role.
Yeah, definitely. And then also just being intentional and being present really being present in every space that you're in, whether it's SGA or Greek life. Just, when you're in a chapter room, then you're in chapter, in Senate, you're in Senate, and just making sure that whatever you're pursuing, just being intentional with the time you have and the space that you're in.
Audience question. Describe your campaign in one word.
In one word, motivated.
I'm going to say fun.
I'm going to say driven.
All right, my mic's already on. What's one unique way you plan to outreach to students that has not currently been done or is not currently being done?
A unique way that I think we could reach more students would be look at how many RSOs our university has, and look at how many RSOs are ran by people that are new to the process or maybe are freshmen. I think it would be unique to take a look at potentially putting all of the RSO leaders, like presidents, into a group chat on GroupMe, and basically giving them this group chat as an opportunity to talk amongst themselves if they ever have questions. Not to take their questions away from us, but just so that they can be almost as like an intermediary force for themselves to think, if we have an issue that we don't know how to resolve and we need to get to someone immediately, someone in this group chat is going to respond to me. So I think it would be good to discuss in something like that, maybe making an initiative to look at a GroupMe of the RSO presidents. I think it would be good to maybe offer them a little bit more of their own continuity of maintaining their group, but also giving them a little bit more of a shoulder to rely on.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that there is an RSO GroupMe for the presidents already established, and that resource is already available to RSO presidents. But one of the things that we would like to do is maybe outreach. A lot of the students who are involved at Wichita State are heavily involved in multiple spaces, and it's a lot of familiar faces. So one of the things that we would love to prioritize is reaching students who, again, are commuter students or don't necessarily find themselves at different events for organizations or things like that. So finding ways to reach them, whether it's working around their class schedule, working around their work schedule, having conversations with commuter students specifically, and our other non-traditional learner student populations.
And I think another thing that we've discussed in terms of doing things new here in student government, we've talked about potentially having a podcast specifically for students to tune into, so having non-traditional ways for students to interact with student government, being able to have, an additional live forum for students to come in and ask questions to us in more casual settings. So going out into the community, having coffee, having lunch with students, being able to engage with them in non-traditional ways is a way that we certainly think will increase engagement and trust and connection with our students in the long term.
Yeah, just in rebuttal to that, I guess that completely went over my head, but yeah, you're right. There is that group chat. So I had not thought about that at first. I guess one thing I also thought about too was in the role of a student body president or vice president, the opportunity to table, I think would be valuable because students, obviously hear about the things that the higher level of government does, but to be able to meet and greet, I think would be something that would be valuable. Basically showing like, hey, we're just like you guys, we're here to help this university just like you are. I think that'd be something that'd be very important, is just putting a name to the face and making sure students know who we are.
Yeah, and so I think the executive branch, the president, the vice president have already had many tabling opportunities this session, and that's something that we intend to continue. Anushka and I think, have been at over 80% of those tabling opportunities. We've been at every Wellness Week event this week. We've been at VPSA search forums. We've been at almost every outreach opportunity that you can have for the student government, and we unfortunately don't know if we can say the same for the other ticket.
Okay, our final question from the audience is, how does your administration plan on supporting undocumented students as they navigate issues related to college access with current legislation like Senate Bill 254, which eliminates in-state tuition to this population?
Sure, so in regards to SB 254, I think that the first thing I want to say is we need to make sure that we're doing so in a way that's going to adhere and comply with all law in the state of Kansas. Just as with funding, we cannot go against any of the DEI programming or language, because if we do so, we are risking losing funding for the university, which amounts to $130 million a year. That is not to be taken lightly, especially when the university is getting $2 million less in state funding going forward. So I think that we obviously would like to help these students out, but we need to make sure that in doing so, we're going to comply with all state law. Because just as helping any group out, we want to make sure that we're doing it the right way and not skipping over any of the fine print. There's bullet points, the I's need to be dotted and the T's need to be crossed. And if we don't do it the right way, we could risk losing serious amounts of money. And that would benefit every student, not just the undocumented few who we're trying to help to begin with.
Yeah, so looking at some of those numbers, we know that Wichita State University serves around 15 undocumented students through the precedent that was set before SB 254. And I think having conversations specifically with Zach Gearhart and the administration, he's been really helpful in the legislative session that was held this past Friday in getting students up to date about what that might look like. And so on top of having compliance with the new regulations, ensuring that we're working with local organizations that provide additional opportunities for undocumented students to gain financial aid in maybe in some non-traditional ways, so that we're still able to support this population, no matter what number that may be, to ensure that they're still able to have equitable access to the education and financial opportunities that many other Wichita State students have.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it's about doing what we can to make sure students feel safe on campus, to come to class, to engage with their community, and to ultimately we not only learn here, but we do live here in some capacity, and home should never be a place where you don't feel safe to be.
All right, now we will move into closing statements. Each ticket will have 3 minutes for their closing statement. You may begin.
Well, a big thank you again to all who are here in the audience and everyone watching on the live stream tonight. Thank you to Nazanin for tuning in from Japan. And of course, a big thank you to the IT team who makes this all possible. The staff here, you guys, we don't take it for granted, and so we appreciate you. I also want to say that I couldn't be more proud of Nazanin for her work on this campaign. She has poured her energy, ideas, and heart into all of this, and she's helped make this vision a reality. I'm here today because I care deeply about every student at Wichita State University. I care about your experiences, your opportunities, and your voices being represented in every decision that SGA makes. Our campaign is built on transparency, accountability, and student engagement, and these aren't just words. They are premises and promises about how we will serve you every single day. If elected, we will lead by making SGA more open, approachable, and connected. Students will know how decisions are made, they will know why they're made, and they will have real opportunities to weigh in on these decisions. From surveys and forums to classroom visits and meetings with student organizations, we will make sure that no voice goes unheard and that no student feels left out. Accountability will guide every choice that we make. Leadership is not just about making decisions, but it's about standing by them, explaining them, and learning from them. Students deserve leaders who act with integrity and responsibility, and I promise to be that leader for you. Engagement ties it all together. A government that doesn't actively involve students is not doing its job at its core. We will create opportunities for every student to participate in shaping WSU, from funding RSOs to campus-wide initiatives, so that SGA truly reflects the needs and priorities of the student body. Our goal is simple: to make every student feel heard, valued, and represented. That's why our slogan is "Every Shocker Matters," because every voice shapes the future of our university, and every shocker sincerely does matter. I care about you, I care about this university, and I am ready to fight for every student on this campus. Together, we can make a WSU where every shocker knows they belong, knows they're valued, and knows that they matter. Finally, don't forget, you can vote for us starting April 6th at 8 a.m. until April 8th at 5 p.m., either through your email or select voting locations on campus. If you want to keep up with our campaign, ideas, and updates, or even shoot us a DM, you can do so on Instagram at MN4WSU. Thank you all, God bless, and have a wonderful night.
We first wanted to thank you all for following along this election season and taking the necessary steps to become informed voters within our association. If elected, our administration will reflect a commitment to fostering connections with the next generation of students, building a sense of community here at Wichita State, and making this campus a place that thrives on student-centered outcomes for success. We want to uphold Wichita State's innovation-centered approach by finding new ways to improve relationships between student affairs and academic success, invest in student well-being through targeted strategic skills building, and enhance accountability measures for maximized collaboration potential.
Our goals are not just to maintain steadfast the pursuit of our academic degrees and increase student satisfaction with their college experience, but to also take a solution-focused approach towards promoting fair and equitable treatment across the university. In the true spirit of student government, we believe that students come first in all aspects. We hope that through putting their trust in our abilities, students will be able to recognize the true privilege that comes alongside being a member of Shocker Nation.
Ultimately, we desire to open pathways of communication between student government, administration, and students, so as to nurture candid, upfront discussions of the most pressing matters in students' lives. Our administration will be dedicated to a demonstration of flexibility and dedicated pursuit of the responsibilities pursuant our office.
We take very seriously the value of education and connection and strive to make the most of every student interaction. A vote for Island Raju is not just a step towards a campus that embraces students from all backgrounds in their pursuit of knowledge, but truly makes Wichita State a place for all of us. If you would like to follow along our campaign or have any additional questions, feel free to visit or contact us on Instagram at IslandRaju69. We want to thank you all for being here, whether it's in person or online. We would also like to thank Mason for being here and engaging in meaningful conversation. Good night, and as always, go Sharks!
Thank you all for attending tonight, whether you're here in person or online at the SGA YouTube. The Election Commission wants to strongly encourage students to vote next week. Voting will begin Monday, April 6th at 8 a.m. and close Wednesday, April 8th at 5 p.m. The link to vote will be sent to your WSU student emails. And to vote in person, visit us at one of our following in-person polling locations. On Monday, April 6th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. in the Shocker Dining Hall. Tuesday, April 7th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. in the Shocker Dining Hall. And Wednesday, April 8th from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. in the Radigan Student Center in the East Atrium. Please check out our Instagram at Wichita State SGA to learn more about in-person voting locations and the incentives that we're offering students who vote for this election. Thank you all for joining us and have a great night.